It is the breakdown. You know what that means. It's Wednesday. Thank you for being here on the Canadian Football Perspective Podcast Network. Myself, Marshall Ferguson at TSN_Marsh is where you can find me, of course, at DT on S. He joins me, as always, here on the breakdown. DT, what's going on, man?
Confirmed it's Wednesday because it feels like Friday, Monday, Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, and Tuesday as well. God,
well, the way
everything's the same now.
I was going to say CFL news coming down, every day it seems like right now. The last week has been a blur because of all the XFL things that have come down. And you, I know on the sports cage out there in Regina, you've been talking about it for, it seems like I'm sure 17 straight days, even though it's probably only been 3 that you've actually had to deal with it thus far.
Oh yeah, when we learned about it on Wednesday, all of a sudden everything from Wednesday's show just went completely out because it could be nothing, it could be everything. It just... the circumstantial evidence says it's certainly not nothing. Yeah. And despite the way, and when the commissioner says, we're just talking about talking, and you know in your heart that's not even remotely true, it sends your mind just off into untold directions.
Yeah, no doubt. We did a record number of downloads on the podcast last Thursday morning because myself and Kyle Mello threw an emergency podcast together where it was just basically 2 people yelling for 2 hours about not knowing anything. And I was so angry at myself after I posted it because I had somebody, I think they tweeted at me on Friday or Saturday night, something like that. And I opened up my phone and it was somebody tweeted at us and said, "Just listen to Marshall Mello, great podcast, breaking down all the different angles here of the XFL-CFL potential partnership. But I can't believe how much people are talking about this." And it struck me that I should have named that podcast Talking About Talking About Talking. It would have been perfect, and I didn't do it, and I was so angry as a producer of my own content. I was like, how did I not realize that would have been the perfect headline? Because it just seems so ridiculous. But again, we're going to go, I think, into a more actual deep dive on all of this next week. There's some really, really interesting stuff that I was actually sent from a listener that I want to get into next week, but I want to do it at a time where we can maybe read through it more, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into a potential partnership and what the finances mean on that side. And I don't want to reveal the person that sent it in and all the rest, and I'm not trying to be conspiracy theorist guy. It's over my head in a lot of places, and I don't want to present information to people here on the breakdown that I don't fully understand. So I need some time to get up to speed and understand it. Albeit I sent what I had to Derek, and you're probably up to speed. So you can feel free to riff on it however you want.
We'll dive into it more. Ultimately, when you're dealing with a venture capital company, however you want to describe Redbird Capital, do they want to buy tradition? Mm-hmm. Or do they want to buy $4 billion worth of tradition? When you look at their portfolio, are they buying tradition? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. They're
that's
not,
all I can say.
They're not based in the idea of being able to take something and raise it back to where it previously was and honor it. Like you're saying, it's about being able to go in, find something that's vulnerable, capture it, make money off of it, and move forward, which is, again, I don't want to throw up all the red flags and have people just losing their minds about it the way everybody has on Twitter. Hell, I wanted so badly to talk about football and to watch football today. I couldn't stand the CFL-XFL discussions. Like, I'm so tired of my timeline. My timeline on #CFL, which I'm always monitoring and I always see what's coming across. I used to love when it was cellophane light bulbs, which for some reason the light bulb community loves using #CFL. And Central Florida weather is the other one that typically just like sprinkles in. And I go, what are you? Oh, you're one of the Central Florida weather people. It's been taken over by XFL news accounts, which is either bots or people in their basements essentially at this point. And it's like, I miss when the CFL hashtag was primarily for people having these engaging discussions about the news of the day or how the games went, things of that. And maybe we'll get back to that point and this will kind of weave itself out. But because it was such a bomb that was dropped, it's just going to emanate and circle everything that happens in the next while. So today I went back and I did what I usually do for CFL games in season. I started doing it for the 1954 Grey Cup. And let me tell you, that was a great game. 18-14 late into the fourth, and being able to see Jackie Parker and Bernie Filoni there in Edmonton, Sam Echeverry, the rifle in Montreal. Also amazing because there's no graphics on the screen. DT, you know this from all the work you do tracking CFL games. You rely on the graphics, but you also rely on the play-by-play guys to be able to piece together exactly what is happening. And sometimes you cheat by listening to them say, hey, gain of 3, you go, boom, gain of 3. Okay, now I don't have to actually watch that. I can listen. It's multi-sensory to try and get things done quickly. And when I was going through this game, there's no graphics. The video is black and white. It's grainy as all hell. It's 70 years ago. And so I'm watching it, piecing it together. It's actually stunning how great the play-by-play was. They tell you, it's like listening to a radio broadcast. They tell you everything you need to know on a television broadcast to the point where I wasn't relying even on where the yard markers were because you couldn't really see anything. The field wasn't labeled all that well, but you're getting all the info and all the data that you need. So anyways, the reason I bring this up is part of my many projects I'm working on here at CFP is archiving every Grey Cup, starting from the first full game, which is 1954, and moving forward. That way I can compare quarterback data throughout eras. I can look at Warren Moon's Grey Cup performances versus Bo Levi Mitchell's, and we can try to figure out maybe later how to adjust those for the era that you're in. It gives you great possibilities for looking at and analyzing Grey Cups throughout history, and also recognizing great Grey Cup performances and really bad Grey Cup performances, and then parsing those out, which is one of the things that, of course, I enjoy doing, not just with the quarterbacks, but especially with quarterback play. Like how did Doug Flutie compare against Zach Collaros in the times he's been in the Grey Cup? Let's have a discussion. Let's look at the numbers side by side and think about how you remembered those games versus how they really shook out.
Yeah, that was one of the things I left TSN too early to do. Was I had this idea and I talked to the folks. I said, here's what I want to do. I want to take every game that we air on ESPN Classic that the panelists played in, Henry Burris and Matt Dunnigan and Chris Schultz and on, and go back and go, how many quarterback pressures did Schultz allow? What was Matt Dunnigan's passing accuracy? You get some, right? It's not like having all 86 games of the season where you get to actually, over years, you can actually come up with something and be like, I'm done again. That 7-13 game. I mean, come on, you were only accurate on like 60% of those. You got Joe Pow saved you or whatever, right? Yeah. That would have been an incredible feature to do, to go back through like 50 games in the archive and fire it up, because there's a point where the CFL's data kind of pre-Steve Daniel really is not particularly accessible to the public, right? And there are years where, there aren't names attached to this game, so I don't know who. Just says run for 9 yards, doesn't tell you who it was. Pass complete for 7 yards. Like, who is the quarterback or receiver and what team is on the field? So to be able to, anything we can kind of get from the archives of CFL history will be in great demand. People will love to have it. So it's super cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, and it's actually really fun because I was always a bit of a history geography nerd. I was never math. I was never science when I was going throughout high school and university. And so to be able to have that cross section of my love for Canadian football and my love for history and really geography, because I kind of look at what I do as kind of like what Kirk Goldsberry describes himself as when it comes to the NBA world, which is he's a cartographer. He is mapping the world of the National Basketball Association. And for me, that's a goal of mine throughout CFP here, amongst other things that we're working on, is to be able to map the world of a CFL football field and to be able to explain to you in terms you understand where things happen, why they happen there, what to look for when you're watching a game. Now, is that CFL field going to stay a CFL field? Is, I think, the thing that has kind of been capturing my imagination, and maybe why I feel this innate need to go back and look at the history of the game, because as we're talking so much about the future, and the future feels so uneasy for so many different reasons, whether it be investment from people we don't know much about, or if it's coming out of a pandemic or coming off a year we've never had games. I mean, there's so much at play that I think for me, I've just like retracted into my little cocoon and I'm like, hey, 1954, can I just love you? Because you were so wholesome and wonderful.
Yeah. And on the other hand, I mean, with that, I keep thinking about the unanswered questions about this CFL-XFL thing, right? And it can lead you down roads and all of a sudden you're in a blind alley and you're in trouble. But there's just questions, and then there's misconceptions online, and you'd love to go out and fix every one of them. Go, really? Do you really think the CFL the XFL is coming to this in a position of weakness and is begging the CFL for anything? Do you really believe that? Please tell me why. But then you realize it's the internet, and you're never going to have a true conversation on the internet because it's the internet or it's social media, and that's not how it's That's clearly not what it's designed for. This is the time where we need to not have a pandemic so we can all get together for beers and discuss these kind of things and go, really, why do you believe that to be true? And then you drop a wing on the floor and you eat it and you don't even think about it because it wasn't a pandemic before and I ate it off the floor. Yes, blame me. I did it.
I'm so with you, man. I feel like so many problems in Canada, so many stresses have been relieved by wings and beer, and we can't do it together right now. And it's something that I'm very much looking forward to us being able to figure out how to return to normalcy. I don't know how long that will take, but let's dive into a little bit here just for a couple of minutes on the XFL CFL and specifically because I haven't heard your take on this. I haven't been listening to the Sports Cage other than when you had me on today because I've been running around tracking 1954 Grey Cups. And so I'm wondering where you stand on 3 downs, 4 downs, because analytically, which obviously is a focus of this show, I love the idea of 3 down football because as I talked with June Jones on Monday, and I implore people to go back and listen to that in the feed here on CFP, he was talking about how it promotes passing. So, I have this personal belief that as a quarterback, one of my favorite things ever was when my coach would call a run, just a basic inside zone, let's say 32 zone, 33 zone, and we'd run it and the running back would get stuffed for a gain of 2. And you're thinking, well, why would you love the idea of your running back getting stuffed for a gain of 2? Because by the time that I had handed the ball off and done a bootleg, or if I'm in the gun, I hand it off and I take my 2 steps hard like I'm running zone read, and I end up seeing him getting tackled, I am locked on my offensive coordinator, and I'm saying to myself, give me 60 levels win. I want my favorite pass concept. Give me 70 corner. Give me 55 roll. I want to be able to have, a hero hinge, something like I had these things in my mind pregame where I'm saying in 2nd and long, I know that if we get 2nd and 8, sure, we might surprise somebody, pop a draw, whatever, a screen. But typically 2nd and long, 2nd and 7 plus in the CFL, that's your money down, man. That's where you make your name. That's where Zach Collaros won the Grey Cup for Winnipeg because he was able to come in and do what Strevler was not able to do by dominating in that down and distance wherever it was on the field. He came in and he made throws that the Bombers badly needed to advance throughout the Western playoffs. So when I think of taking away the value of that 2nd down where it's not promoting passing and you don't know you're getting your favorite pass concepts as a quarterback, to me, that's scary. I also understand what I heard Vernon Adams Jr. say the other day in an interview with John Liu on TSN, where he said, just give us the extra down. We'll just keep throwing it as much as we did in the first place, which that's the counter argument to me. But we know that's not true. If you're given an extra down, coaches are going to say, well, why would I feel the pressure to throw the ball on 2nd and 8 if I'm going to get 3rd and 4 by running the ball for a gain of 4?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL proves it, right? Like the Pete Carroll's absolute insistence on running on 1st down and running on 2nd down and then forcing Russell Wilson to do magic on 3rd down is the thing that holds back the Seattle Seahawks. Tennessee's insistence that, oh, well, we paid Derrick Henry, so we got to run him. Okay, it's 2nd and 9. Okay, it's 3rd and 8. Now we need Tannehill to save us. Coaches still haven't fully grabbed on how much more valuable throwing the football is. So it becomes a real interesting conversation of, okay, you're going to throw the ball more. I was concerned talking to someone today. Well, if you went short field and 3 downs, are you just going to end up with more punts? Are we going to have more 2 and outs? And Fox is going back to commercial because America loves commercials. Is that what's going to happen with this thing? Will they go 4 downs? They'll run the ball more, but would 3 downs just speed it up because of teams are going to be more likely to throw the ball on 1st down, knowing they only have 2 downs to play with? It's interesting. It'd be cool to see if the XFL ever did go that way in a 3 down way, how it would play out, how coaches would work it, because some will be so committed to establish the run and some will think, okay, well, no, I got to bail on that. And we got to get close to the 70-30 they are in Canada. And we got to throw this thing because 10 yards is actually quite a long way when 11 people are trying to murder you and keep you from getting those 10 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that jumped out to me as well on that is that, you have a quarterback like Tannehill who everybody praises him because he is able to save the Titans' backside when they get put in 3rd and long. That's great. But he also does it with a full extra layer of security on 2nd down, knowing, I don't feel the pressure of if we run it for a short gain on 1st, then I get to jump to 3rd down essentially. June Jones also said to me that he took all of his 3rd and short calls or 3rd and long calls, and he just shifted them to 2nd down. He eliminated the fat. He got rid of 2nd, And he said, my third down calls have now become my second down calls, and my second down calls in Canada, they're just out of the book. And his offense, it didn't change. So the idea that the XFL is going to have an impossible time adjusting, if and even it were allowed to happen, I just don't believe that. I think that we are looking at this as, well, they've got more people, they've got money, they've got investment. The CFL seems desperate. In order to even get to the table, they need to be desperate. So they're probably going to have to give something of value up. And everybody thinks, well, you know, the CFL, the 3 downs is not important. And I'm sitting here going, 3 downs is a better version of football. Just because America doesn't want to learn how 3 downs is supposed to operate and the excitement value that you can get from it offensively, that's on them. That's not on the Canadian Football League for playing an inferior style of football. And you mentioned the punts too, DT. And I agree with you. That's a concern for me, is the idea that it's going to be, you know, a pass, incompletion, punt, pass, incompletion, punt, back, forth. Yeah. And all of a sudden the broadcasters are going, what the hell are we paying X amount of millions of dollars for? But have you noticed what happens with punts in the XFL? You are not allowed as a gunner to go until the ball is struck off the foot of the punter. Similar to what the CFL had, where you couldn't have the interior be able to shoot down the lanes. And we were trying to open up room where it's not just always going to be no yards, 5-yard halo, everybody standing around, jumping inside the circle and then picking the ball up and diving forwards. And so if you are in the XFL and you are promoting excitement and being different and creative, why would you be concerned about your creative return rules that are opening up the return game being used more if there happens to be more punts? I don't think there will be a whole lot more, because I think there's good offensive talent in the XFL that if they adjusted to 3 downs, you'd see a lot of attacks just open up and go crazy with numbers. But I do think that if there's going to be punts more frequently, the XFL, if you are trying to create return advantage versus coverage advantage, that's going to open up your game even more. And you're going to see all these exciting returns. You know what makes highlights? Exciting returns. It's the easiest thing ever. You know, from working on SportsCenter, if nothing happens in a game, but somebody dazzles on a 45-yard punt return for a touchdown, that's going to make the highlight pack no matter what.
Yeah, the problem I think that would result is you're promoting punt returns, but are you also promoting chronic traumatic encephalopathy, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that is, special teams are when high-speed vehicle hits high-speed vehicle head on versus, I mean, in the CFL, someone asked me, this was years ago, do you think the concussion rate and the head injury rate in the CFL is less than it is in the NFL? And I thought, well, I have nothing to back this up, but I feel like it is, because I don't see a lot of head-on-head. Andrew Harris is pounding up the middle and down comes Mike Edem at 1,000 miles an hour and kills them. They're more angled shots to guys. And I like with kickoffs are eventually going to go the way to the dodo. Like, the NFL doesn't want to do kickoffs virtually at all, yet they hold on to them because they might get Cordero Patterson returning one, right? But like, those are the next things that we have to, if we're really concerned about brain injury, special teams are going to be the thing we need to move out. So I feel like the XFL, though they might want to capitalize on that, will probably quickly realize, oh, we gotta get rid of this because that guy's out for ever. Right. Now. Yeah, and that's the real concern, right?
I agree that there are concerns there. The other thing that I think people look at this as an incredibly polarizing conversation of adapt all of the CFL stuff and get rid of all the XFL or vice versa. What I'm saying is, the CFL promotes offense with the 3 downs. The size of the field is good for player safety. We have seen this. The angles on the field. I said this to June Jones the other day. If you have your number 3 receiver to the field and he's running a little drag underneath crosser route and it's zone, if the will linebacker is sitting outside and you have that slot receiver running a crosser, a drag underneath, and he catches it in the NFL, if he doesn't turn his head up right away, that will linebacker is going to murder him. In the CFL, those shots, yes, they can be violent, but it's giving you an extra 2 yards, 3 yards of space width-wise to be able to say, okay, if you're going to drop out into coverage into the flats, get a little bit of depth, whatever it might be, read the quarterback's eyes, you still might get a big shot, but it's less frequent and it's less violent. And does it feel any different as a football play? It feels the exact same. You're still getting a crossing route. You're still getting a catch. You're still getting a big-time tackle. You're getting the same gain. You're just not getting the violence of these squeeze. Have you ever sat in the lower bowl of an NFL game, DT?
No, I never have. No.
Okay, so in Buffalo, Tebow was actually playing for the Jets when I saw him. He was on the sidelines. I was screaming at him saying he was going to love Jacksonville. I was convinced he was going to be a Jag. But anyways, so I'm in the lower bowl. I was actually there with Spencer Moore, who, of course, now plays for the Montreal Alouettes and was in Saskatchewan there for a long time. And I went with him and his dad because he played with me at McMaster. Last second thing, we picked up some scalpers. We drove down, end of season. Bills are out of the playoffs. Jets are out of the playoffs. They're not playing for anything. And we go down into the lower bowl, which we didn't have tickets for, but there was nobody there, so who cares? We wandered down into the lower bowl, which I'm sure is a CFL classic for a lot of fans listening to this. And there was a toss play, okay? A toss play on a 50-yard wide field where you've got offensive tackles that are 6'8", 330 pounds. You've got offensive guards that are freakishly athletic. They can move like the wind. You've got a running back who runs a 4.2, 4.3. You've got receivers that are 6'4", 6'5" on the outside, trying to run people up. The speed of the game when you're down low is fast on any given play. But on this one play, I'm sitting behind the Jets bench. I'm about 10 rows up, and there's a toss play towards us. Typical. I think it was Sanchez. Under center, takes the snap, reverse pivot, tosses it to the running back. He starts running on that 45-degree angle. They're trying to reach block with the tackle and the guard out in front. The tight end was involved, getting to the second level, trying to get to the free safety. A linebacker shoots the gap from Buffalo, hits the running back on this toss play with a sound that I will never forget. I was scared. Like, I've played football my whole life, and I was scared sitting that low, and everybody got up and everybody walked back to the huddle. Nobody said anything. It's just another play in the NFL. And to me, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, why would the CFL even negotiate on playing that style of football? More running, tighter angles, more injuries. They've done so much work to try to get better at these things, and now they're going to give it up in order to get capital investment. Again, I know it's desperate times, and there's so many different branches on this tree, so it's unfair for me to say, don't negotiate on 3 downs, don't negotiate on size of the field, don't negotiate on the ratio. But in my heart of hearts, that's how I feel, man. Like, that's where this passion comes from and the frustration comes from, is I want the best for the CFL. If that means surviving, you might have to give something up. But man, scratch and claw and keep as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I've been using the following metaphor for it. If you had flesh-eating disease in your legs and your arms and you wanted to live, how much would you be willing to hack off? Would you hack off both your legs and both your arms
morbid
if that was how you would live? Right? It would be awful. Oh, I don't want to give up my legs and arms, obviously. Well, you're going to die if you don't.
Yeah.
Well, I could still watch Netflix if someone started it for me. Siri could respond to my calls for Siri, play Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? They could have that. But I mean, and that will be the whole thing that ultimately decides everything. For all the conversation about, well, we need to keep these rules and we need to keep this and that. How desperate is the CFL? How powerful is the XFL? And I honestly don't know the answer to that. I just know the XFL comes with an incredible sum of money behind it, much less the star power. It's the money we need to talk about. They come with a bunch of money. The CFL has the need for a bunch of money. Quid pro quo. What is the quo? Is it, hey, you guys have 9 franchises, that will give us the appearance of stability. You guys have a $50 million national TV contract and radio contracts with, in 9 markets. That will give us stability to sell to our potential American partners in the future. What is it? There's essentially like 3 questions I've had that remain unanswered. In what does the CFL have that the XFL wants? Because I can figure out the XFL part. What does the CFL have that the XFL wants? Why did the XFL push back its 2022 season, the one a year from now? Why did they announce they were pushing that back? And is TSN, the league's broadcast partner, going to let Dave Naylor write wild speculation? Those are the 3 questions that when I start to try to answer them, I get less and less comfortable about the position the Canadian Football League is in these talking about talking.
Yeah, I'm with you on so much of that. And the media angle on it, I think, has been, I tweeted about it today, just how difficult it is to get it straight, to get real information right now, because I really do think we got to be more responsible. And that's why I kept saying so many times over, and I'm sure that you've done the same thing on the Sports Cage, but when I was doing Marsh and Mello last week, emergency podcast, and Kyle and I are ranting back and forth and talking it out like this, as we're doing that, I just kept saying, hey, I want to preface this. There's no guarantee this is even a merger. We have no idea what this is going to become. But the fact that we haven't been given facts, and that CFL came out and said we are having discussions, but not letting us know what the discussions were about, that's going to create, as my good friend Scott Hasty, who's our creative director on CFP, said to me, he said, when you don't fill that void for people and give them the information they need to feel educated and comfortable about something. If you just say, hey, we're talking and fill in the blanks yourself, then obviously in the culture we're living in right now in selective disinformation, you're going to have people selectively fill that void with whatever conspiracy culture idea they have in their own skin. And that's a dangerous thing to just leave to people to say, hey, make up your own reality here. Why did we have to announce this and leave this open-ended for people to just make their own assumptions? Because we have such limited information about where this is going. I really do think that's the reason that CFL Twitter and social media at large has been so scared by this, is because when you don't get answers, there's this fear of the unknown. Well, if I don't know something, I'm scared of it, therefore I don't like it. Okay, but maybe if we were given more information on the front end, instead of just, hey, we're talking, fill in your own blanks, there would be more information, there would be more knowledge, there would not be fear of the unknown, and therefore we wouldn't have to be scared of it all.
Well, that's an Ambrosi staple, right? You liked 60 cross, whatever, 70 corner, whatever those were. That's an Ambrosi staple. It's everything is on the table, and we're talking with all of our partners, and everything is on the table. And I said to Ambrosi when I interviewed him, I said, "Oh, does that include a complete merger?" Yep. And he didn't say no to that because everything is on the table. Does that include selling yourself to the XFL? He didn't love hearing that question like that. And I'm not sure I asked it in exactly that way, but you know what I'm saying? It's Ambrosi likes to, that's going to happen. We're going to have a conversation with, I want to really sit down and talk to, but the people, folks on Twitter who say, well, we don't have, I got chastised the first day. Well, we have no evidence of anything. So why are you even putting up a poll question? And I thought, do you really think we don't have any information?
Yeah.
Circumstantial as the evidence might be, do you really believe we go into this with no information? Do you think the CFL or the XFL is in a position of power? I dramatically think it's in favor of the XFL, because as we learn in every job of news I've ever had, follow the money. Yeah. It's about the money. Why did Tom Condon buy the AAF? Well, follow the money. Why did Tom Condon fold the AAF? Oh, proprietary gambling software is apparently the reason why. Oh, okay, well, now I get why Tom Condon bought the AAF and turfed it the next day, whatever, it wasn't long afterward. Follow the money. One side has it, the other side is to some degree desperate for it. Okay, now I have that piece of information. And then there were little things that didn't have to happen. Let's say it that way. The XFL didn't have to put its 2022 season on hold. It was over a year away. There was no schedule laid out. I don't think they have coaches or teams, or they have teams, but I don't know if their deals are locked down with stadiums. They didn't have to say, we're delaying our 2022 season pending the outcome of our talks with the CFL.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of information that indicates to me something big is happening. TSN put out a statement saying something along the lines of, we support these talks. Why did TSN say anything? Neither of those organizations had to say anything. So you then go, okay, well, TSN, if they're putting out a statement of support, they must be really in this. They must be really in this, because why say anything? Marcia and Mello didn't put out a statement, that
we
day,
thought about
right?
it. We actually had it penned, and then we just didn't send it out. I mean, it was a close call. Our PR specialist said, "Nah, don't worry about it."
So there's a lot of circumstantial information, and I guess the key to your point is not to take it too far and go, yeah, it's over for everybody and everything. Right. But I just like to think about the Naylor thing. I keep coming back to the Naylor thing, and Naylor might not be in the same room with 9 boards of governors and the commissioner and the folks from the XFL side, but when he wrote that column on Wednesday and he said fans should brace themselves for CFL teams playing XFL teams in 2022, do you really believe Naylor is going to write those words on his own when his check is cut by the company who owns the rights to the Canadian Football League, Canadian television broadcast? Because I don't believe that Naylor's a journalist. It fits within his journalistic priorities, but I don't believe that he could have written just anything that day. I think it was probably controlled to some degree by the group that he works for, because they have interest in the result of these talking about talkings.
Know what one jumped out to me, and this is not a Dave Naylor banging on session, but there was a tweet of his that just absolutely jumped off the page to me on Thursday. And it was
Yeah.
Bob Irving, who, by the way, Bob Irving
Yes.
is the best follow on all of Twitter because he's very similar to, it's a funny thing with Twitter. Just, I don't want to go like full, behind the music here on Twitter, but when Twitter was created, we are living in the golden age of different age groups treating Twitter in different ways. The kids are just sharing their TikToks, okay? Guys like you and I, we're trying to use it for information gathering. Older people, which I feel very comfortable and respectful saying, Bob Irving, I love you. You happen to be older, so I'm going to put you in this category. They tweet.
He's a hot older man. Let's not kid ourselves.
I agree. Hey, Bones. But I agree that he uses Twitter to post one thing a day, and then I think Bob Irving walks away from his phone or turns it off and doesn't even know what the hell happens in the trail blaze of fire that leaves behind him. So he tweets out something which, as always, Bob Irving is smart and classy and well-respected, not just in the market that he's dominated forever in Winnipeg, but well beyond his reaches. And he said something to the likes of, nobody would dare tear away the fabric of our Canadian game that we have worked so hard to cultivate, to develop, to perfect. Nobody would do that. Dave Naylor tweets back, wanna bet? And I was like, why is a TSN insider appear to be trolling the opinions of a well-respected radio man and Bob Irving? It jumped out to me, and it just made me laugh because I saw it and I went, wow, he fully believes that this is happening. And I'm not laughing at the thing that it might happen. I'm laughing at the idea that I was stunned at my computer going, why is he, it feels like he's trolling this older man who is just trying to get out his deeply passionate Canadian take on a social media platform. And Naylor's like, no, I ain't here for that. Here's the facts. And just basically was saying, you need to change your way of thinking or you're going to be left behind. And that was a scary, simple 2-word tweet to me. Want to bet? That'll be burned in my memory if we have any major changes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That one really stuck out for me as well. And I thought, oh boy, yeah, that's how much, because we all want to know how much does Naylor know for sure, and how much is he the one cushioning the blow for the CFL or priming the surface, whatever you want, tenderizing the meat, whatever it is, right? How much is he getting folks ready for what's to come or what he believes is what to come? Because if he can soften the blow on the front end, the folks that read his stuff, and as a Canadian Football League insider, will appreciate whatever, they'll be made easier the transition to whatever this partnership ends up being.
Derek, I'm proud of you because on Marsh and Mellow on Fridays, we have a stinger that we've played for a long time. Anytime we say something that might not have journalistic integrity, and it's basically a disclaimer that allows you to say whatever the hell you want. So I'm just going to play this for you. You're an honorary user of this stinger now, okay?
Okay.
It's time to throw away all your integrity and credibility. This is something we like to call reckless speculation.
And then you're good. Yes. From there forward, you can say anything you want. It's a legal disclaimer, and you cannot be punished by the court of public opinion or anywhere else. So I'm proud of you for being able to ingratiate yourself. I'll finish off by just saying this when it comes to the discussion around the XFL and what it all means. I've received no less than 10 to 15 DMs, texts, emails this past week, really throughout the weekend, but this past week, from people that are coaching in Canada, not in the CFL, in high school, in the CJFL, and in U Sports.
Oh, yeah.
And those people, they've reached out to, and here's the thing, man, like, for people that know me well enough, you know where I come from. I played quarterback at McMaster. Yeah, whatever. Whoop-de-doo. Congratulations, Marshall. You never played in the CFL. I totally get it. The CFL is my passion. U Sports has my heart. I hate to use a bachelor term and feel like I'm at the final rose ceremony with Emmanuel Acho, but here's the reality. Like, U Sports football absolutely has my
the new host of The Bachelor. Oh my gosh.
I watched it. I did watch it. Yeah. He was really stiff, by the way. For a guy that Emmanuel Acho, he did a very good job. It's a very difficult conversation. I'm glad we're having it, but it was not the same final rose ceremony. Let me say that. But I just say to people that are thinking, you know what, we can just get rid of the ratio and it won't have any impact on Canadian football. because U Sports Football has my heart, I think of the people that work their asses off 24/7, 365 to create a top level of university football in this country. And it's a feeder system to the CFL. Like, it's CFL Combine and CFL draft season. We don't have U Sports Football film to watch, and I feel naked going into the CFL draft because I want to rewatch the games I already watched in the fall and be able to peel through and look at the kids that are from down the street and give them credit and talk to their coaches who are also primarily from down the street. I want to do all of that, and I can't. And I'm just imagining a future where I never get to again, where the CFL Combine doesn't matter because the CFL draft is null and void because the CFL isn't the CFL, or the CFL draft doesn't matter because the ratio isn't involved and you can draft anybody from anywhere at any time. When you devalue what Canadians mean to your league, you just eliminate Canadians. I got a DM from somebody that works in U Sports yesterday, said, how many guys that are Canadians do you think would get to play in the CFL/XFL if a merger or anything of that nature came about? I said there might be 10, all things considered.
If that,
that would be given the ability. And that's the top of the top of the top. That is your Drew Desjardins, your Dakota Shepleys, if you were still around in the CFL in Saskatchewan. That's your Henoc Muamba, I think, which we'll get to in a second. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that would get that opportunity, but because they've been given the opportunity, man, look what Andrew Harris has become. Like, does Andrew Harris get his opportunity in BC to come from the CJFL and develop into a Grey Cup MVP in 2019 if that dude doesn't have a maple leaf attached to his name? The answer is no. Like, this is why the CFL exists, and the fabric of it, if you take away the value of the Canadians, you're going to see a trickle down into the junior levels, into U Sports, into high school, and it's going to be devastating, which is why Jim Mullen, I hope that he gets out in front of as many cameras as possible and just keeps telling people why this matters so much and keeps applying public pressure to the CFL, because, again, it comes back to the whole idea of your skin eating flesh, which, by the way, very morbid. You could have gone like quicksand or something. But the idea of being able to maintain something as much as possible that is Canadian in Canadian football, it's integral to the entire sports culture. This is an industry that is on its way up. It's developing. We can't short circuit that from the top down. And so many coaches have reached out to me and said, do they have any idea what they're actually discussing doing to the entire system? And my answer is, it's money. It's money. I mean, that, like you say, always follow the money. And that's the thing that's it's so scary that desperation for the money, as you say, it might put us in this spot where we're sitting here in a couple of years and it's all so different. And again, I don't want to go doomsday. It's just, we have to lay out the possibilities. And from talking to people that I have that know how much I care about U Sports Football, it's really, really concerning.
Yeah. From everybody I know in the CFL and everybody who works in the CFL, to ruin football in Canada, you would only do that if that was your the last thing you could do to save it, right? If you had to, the CFL will not take any of this lightly. They know where they are as an institution. They know their effects on U Sports, on junior, on high school, on CJEP, on bantam football, all the way through on touch football. They know their effects and how they lead this country in the football world. So if they do it, I will just take the stand that, okay, this is the only thing. This was their only option. This was the absolute nuclear option for the CFL. But people at every level have a right to be concerned about, well, what are they talking about? Because, oh my goodness, if all of a sudden the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats are playing 4-down football, well, so is every other football league in Canada. Mm-hmm. The U Sports will be 4-down, junior 4-down. That will ripple through everybody, because there'll be no point left in playing the 3-down game when your next step, if those Canadian kids can ever even get to the NFL. This is going to go down a real dark path, so I'm just going to stop now because the worst case scenario is very awful.
Yeah. Nuclear is the term, I think, that best describes it in that way, for sure. So let's get to a Canadian kid, Henoc Muamba here. Let's turn the page and look at what the Toronto Argonauts did just before we ended up taping this bad boy. We get word that Henoc Muamba on, what day is it here? Tuesday that we are taping, March 16th, finally decides to make a decision. He is a month and 7 days after free agency opened. Why now, DT? Why now? Why Toronto now? Because it feels like the money that he got was probably available at the beginning, the middle, and obviously the end of this period of a month and 7 days.
We asked that same question with Darrell Walker, right, in 2020. Why didn't Darrell Walker have a team when this was all done? And you wonder about what were negotiations like. What did his agent, in this case, I believe he's representing himself now. His agent passed away. I don't know that to be a fact, but
was he a Hardaway guy?
He was a Jonathan Hardaway guy,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
So how much did he want? But sometimes it's how much did teams believe he wanted? And it may not be true at all, but, I hear that Muamba wants X and we're not going to pay X, so we shouldn't even call him. When calling him, you might have found out it was a different deal. I just have to believe. I can't believe it's because people don't think Henoc Muamba can play football. That just doesn't make any sense. The guy, most outstanding Canadian, different player in 18 than he was in 19, but he was still fantastic in the middle of that Montreal defense. So if it's not, okay, well, he's not skilled enough, there had to be some sort of misassumption or bad assumption or miscommunication on the side of how much does he want to get paid, because not a lot else makes sense. And it might be on Henoc. It might absolutely be, he might be 100% innocent on it. He might have been just kind of waiting to see what happened. But it's odd that a player that good had to wait this long to take a deal. And then Dave Naylor reports it was less than $100,000.
Yeah, that was the thing that jumped out to me as well, was if somebody was going to wait this long, we all assumed it was going to be for a big payday. And we had heard Edmonton might be interested, and I had thrown out Hamilton there because I thought, well, I understand that Javon Santos-Knox and Chris Fry can probably fill that spot. They might have some more names in-house I'm not even aware of right now by the time we get to training camp, which is hopefully sooner rather than later. But the idea of being able to go to the place that you predicted, right, about a month ago, you said Toronto makes the most sense in this spot based on their approach, based on what Pinball and John Murphy are doing in that front office. It made a lot of sense to you, and I give you full credit for that, because I thought, like Cam Judge, and they'll find somebody else to play middle. And he ends up going there. And when I saw the announcement, hey, he's an Argo today, immediately I'm thinking to myself, okay, they caved, they gave him a bunch of money, and time was up, and he wants to get going. He wants to lock in. He wants his either signing bonus or his report to camp bonus, or he wants to have that in place before the season really gets rolling, hopefully in the next 2 months or so. And then it came down with the dollar value, and I was like, man, I feel like he could have got that in a lot of places, but it's obvious that he was sold on being a Mississauga guy and being able to go back home, which is something we see endlessly in the Canadian Football League over the last couple of years in free agency as players going home, but also what they are doing in Toronto. It's interesting to me that he left Montreal, a place where he was the heart and soul. He was the loudest guy in the locker room. He was the one that gave the inspirational speeches going out onto the field. He would lead them out of the tunnel at Percival Molson. And he looked at Toronto, a team that Montreal, I don't know what the direct head-to-head was by Toronto and Montreal in 2019, but the last time we played, I thought of Montreal as a significantly more dangerous team than I did. I thought of Montreal as a much more dangerous team than Toronto, obviously, not just because of records, but because of style of play and the leadership they had in place. And now you've got Henoc Muamba looking at what's happening in Toronto with Charleston Hughes, Cordero Law, Eric Rogers, Nick Arbuckle, Ryan Dinwiddie, the coaching staff he's brought in. And it's obvious that Henoc has looked at this. For the amount of money that he got, he probably could have looked at a lot of other places and said, would you guys be willing to give me that amount of money? Now, I'm not saying 9 teams would have said yes, but I'm betting there's 4 or 5 that would have said yes at that amount, based on what his value is and what he gives you for ratio flexibility. And so for him to take that money, that says to me, he was sold not on the price. He was sold on the concept. He was sold on the idea of what Toronto's becoming. And he values that idea more highly than he values the knowledge that he has of what Montreal is. Because Montreal, maybe he's reading the tea leaves and he says, there's no way we get back to where we were. But for him to jump Montreal, something that he understands, to go to something that he doesn't know yet in Toronto, that says a lot about the way he's thinking of that relationship for those 2 teams in the East.
His move there, and I would have thought this before, but his move there now, firmly, I mean, Toronto's firmly the second best team in the East off of this. Hamilton's number 1 because even this front 7, which Toronto can put out there now looks really good. Hamilton can match it, and Hamilton has this and this and this and this and this. And oh, by the way, a couple of quarterbacks with with good track records, or in Evan's case, a track record. Probably a few more passes than Arbuckle in his career. Toronto firmly the second place team. And man, there's no team with more flexibility when it comes to dealing with the ratio, right? I don't see how they're only going to start 7 Canadians, and that 3 adopted Canadians rule where you need 10 Canadians, but 3 can be Americans. They could probably just throw it 10 straight Canadians, guys with Canadian passports, right? 2 receivers, 4 offensive linemen, 2 linebackers, a defensive tackle, defensive back, boom, 10, which is incredible. And when you go, oh, okay, well, we need to do this, or, oh, we actually don't need a Canadian backup for Muamba. Bear Woods could be the backup if we can get him on the roster, because we are going to start 9 Canadians and it won't matter a little bit. Bear Woods actually will qualify as those pseudo Canadians. They've given themselves a ton of flexibility. We were praising Jeremy O'Day for that a couple of weeks ago. Bought himself flexibility with how he uses his ratio and how they can figure it out during the season. Toronto, it was a focus of theirs in 2020, and they're doubling down on it in 2021. And that's great for them, because you're not only getting the passports, but you're getting talented dudes with those passports. And sure, Judge is the highest paid linebacker in the league, according to reports. But if you got away with 160 and pretend it's 90 for Henoc Muamba, I'm making that number up, but right. Naylor has said less than 100. If you got 2 Canadian starting linebackers who are of very good quality for under $250,000, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, because an American linebacker in that spot, a rookie American linebacker, would cost you 65. So 25 more, you bought a roster spot. And oh, by the way, most outstanding Canadian tackle machine, all that stuff. He's we'll dive into his game a little bit, but it's a real nice piece of business for Toronto, Toronto's killing the game. This is great. They're doing really well to improve a 4-win team.
Yeah, no doubt. And the last thing I'll say before we dive into a little bit on his game is just that, speaking of ratio flexibility and what it actually gives you, because I think that's a term that we float around a lot, where people like to say it because the ratio still matters. We still have the ratio as of this recording of the podcast. And the idea that you can actually use it to your advantage throughout the season. And again, I think a lot of people view it as, well, it's Canadian guys on your roster, and sure, you can throw one in when another gets hurt. It's more complicated than that, and it's more diverse than that. It is, I'm going to reference the Hamilton Tiger Cats because I follow them week to week when I'm doing their play-by-play, and I know how they shift the roster around. If they end up having somebody from their interior 3 on the offensive line get injured, they have depth on their offensive line with guys backing up that are Canadian to just one guy goes out, one guy goes in. If you were to have somebody like a Tunde Adeleke go down at free safety, Mike Daly's on the roster playing specials, the depth is there, the talent's there, he comes in and he gets an opportunity. If you are a Canadian receiver on the Ticats like Mike Jones, and you go down, well, is David Unger on the roster? If he's not, okay, now we got to fix some because there's an American receiver that's going in. So what are we going to, maybe we have to take somebody out from our offensive line. We have to switch in an American at guard, and it gets more complicated. So teams try to safeguard themselves with the roster composition. I've seen the Ticats have to play Anthony Woodson at running back over CJ Gable before, because there's something happening with the ratio, and because of the roster composition that day, they don't have the flexibility. That's a singular game that I'm talking about, where you got to make decisions on the fly. But when you build a roster that has enough high quality Canadians, that means that throughout the season, you can lose your starting Canadian receiver to an ACL. You can lose your starting left guard to a rolled ankle. You can lose your starting Canadian linebacker to a concussion for 2-3 games, and you can still roll with the punches. And that's where the ratio flexibility, that is the buzzword that we use this time of year, that's where it really comes in, is that it's no longer about a 1-game fix. It's about when somebody gets put on the 6th game, how are we going to massage this roster in a way that still ends up getting to game day and being feared by the team that we're going up against? And Toronto has absolutely done that at this point. There's no, I mean, you could have 3 catastrophic losses, which I don't wish on anybody, knock on wood, hope that doesn't happen. But you could have losses, you could have roster movement, you could have salary cap implications, people getting cut. They could get rid of 3 or 4 high-quality Canadians, and they would just be back at the rest of the league average, it feels like, at this point. And so when they've done enough work to protect themselves, that stuff's not going to pay off in week 1, but it's sure as hell going to pay off in week 12, and then week 15, and then week 18, and then in the playoffs, because it's the long haul that you build the ratio for. It's not for the sizzle on day one. That's what Eric Rodgers is for, right? That's what Nick Arbuckle's there for, is going, oh my God, look at what we did in the offseason. It's the stuff you don't realize, like a Fioli Godino catching a touchdown in the Grey Cup or something, where you go, oh my God, that little move that we made in free agency 2 years ago of picking up this guy and sticking with him while he was getting 7 catches a year. Yeah, guess what? That pays off, because that's how a CFL team is actually built.
Yeah, there were 1 or 2 games late in the 19th season where Calgary had to put Ante Milanovic Leader as their starting running back. Ante Milanovic Leader, fine football player, but they didn't want to do that, right? They injury. Oh, this is the way we're going to balance the ratio. We have to start a Canadian at running back today. I can't believe they really wanted to do that. If you held a gun to their head, do you want to start them there? But that's it. To avoid doing stuff like that, Toronto goes and gets redundancy at defensive back and redundancy at linebacker. Nick Shortle, a guy you know well, can back up Cam Judge, could probably be squeezed into the middle if they need someone to replace Muamba in a situation. It's really well done. What do you think about the pairing of Muamba and Judge together on the field?
Yeah, playing style wise for me, I mean, I'm wondering how offenses, and specifically just because I think about the East a lot in the Canadian Football League. Not that I don't think about everybody out there, but I watch so much East football that I'm constantly, because there's only 4 teams, you see so many similar matchups. I'm thinking about, if I'm Tommy Condell right now from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I see the Argos trotting out, are we going to say Shaq Richardson's out there as the Sam, and then we're going to end up going with Muamba alongside Judge? Is that the projected starting lineup that we've got here for the linebacking core?
That'd be my guess. Yeah,
Okay.
They may have another idea at Sam, but let's say that's the one.
Okay, so if that's the one, then I'm thinking, okay, how do I get after these 2 guys back into the boundary? And for me, it is a variety of pass concepts to be able to isolate the will and try to use Cam Judge's coverage skills against him. I'm not saying he's a bad cover guy. What I'm saying is he's got a lot of strengths, and I think their great strength as a tandem, it feels kind of a little bit similar to Team 100 from the BC Lions, where it's Solly and Adam Bighill, and it's like, do you really want to run anywhere into this front 6? Because I know we call it a front 7, but the front 6, as we've talked about with the Sam being a hybrid, the idea of having somebody run directly into those 2, not to mention the fact that Charleston Hughes is out there when he's being responsible against the run, setting the edge, and that Drake Nevis is fighting it inside, and you got Fabian Foote taking down a double team, and are you leaving Henoc Muamba and Judge free to go and make tackles? So they have a little bit of that vibe to me, where I don't think teams are going to try to utilize big bodies up front to get to them. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of games played from slot backs on little mesh route concepts and little overs and unders and pick routes and rubs, and trying to basically free up those shifty slot guys in space in and around the hash area into the boundary, I would say is going to be a high target area against the Argos in 2021.
Yeah, Muamba is a real interesting character to me, a real interesting player to me, because one of my bugaboos since I was a terrible football player was, whatever you do, don't miss tackles. Just make the tackle, get the guy to the ground, call it a day. And there's honestly no one like Henoc Muamba as far as missing tackles. It's in some seasons just incredible number of, oh, it blew past a guy. Oh, shoot, I got lost. Oh, no, I had him and now I don't have him anymore. He must be covered in something. It's all, he missed 37 tackles in 2018. He had over 100 tackles that year, but fully 1 out of every 4 tackle attempts, Henoc Muamba missed it. And that was a problem for Judge in 2018. It was less of a problem for Judge in 2019. He was back down to about 18%, which is right. You're getting right near the league average for a linebacker. But I wonder how much of that with Judge was Solomon Elimimian. I wonder what Solomon did for Judge's career, how much he did for himself. I feel like those are 2 guys that could, all of a sudden the play is broken, like you're talking about these little mesh routes underneath, and it's gone. It's gone. I'm really concerned about that, and whether that's just a guy needs to slow down a little bit, or it's just something inherent in his game and it's unfixable because now he's 32. It's always been my bugaboo with Muamba, because man, in 18, nobody made more plays in the backfield than Henoc Muamba. Yeah. He had 26 stops for no gain or a loss in 2018. He had 5 sacks, a couple where he had to beat somebody. He had incredible numbers in 2018. And then 2019, he made way fewer plays in the backfield. He made fewer tackles, and then he was the most outstanding Canadian. So I think people think he was better in 19, but I'm all 2018 Henoc Muamba for the impact he was able to have. So is the slowing in his game, the way fewer plays, 26 in the backfield to 9, is that something in his game? Is that something in being over 30? Is that just the way Montreal was using him? I'm very curious to see him in 2021. Frankly, I'm curious to see all football in 2021, but Muamba especially, because he's a guy who has those high reward plays, but then it feels like there's a real risk element of, that's another one, and it's a first down, and this drive, which should have been over on 2nd and 9, is now 1st and 10, and the clock's still going.
Yeah, I don't say this to say that he is simply somebody who is should be walking up and sitting in an A gap and just eating up a blocker. But this is the time of year where your imagination, I think, as a CFL fan, really does start to wander. Where if you know even the slightest thing about X's and O's, we did it when we were talking about the offensive tweaks last week, DT, where I was saying in Edmonton, I'm like, well, you could get Darrell Walker waggling down and Greg Ellingson running a wheel at the backside. And then you got James Wilder Jr. slipping to the flats. You got to try and tackle that guy in space. And like, I love that, because for me, the spring is always, okay, I've got a sense of the rosters. Now I start to play with how are they actually going to use the strengths and the weaknesses for or against themselves and their opponent. And when I think of Toronto, my mind starts to think about things like walking Henoc Muamba up to cover up the center, right? He mugs up the center, and he's surrounded by Fabian Foote, let's say, as we say, Drake Nevis, Cordero Law, maybe Sean Oakman's in there in some weird pass rush package where they take out Drake Nevis and they're going 3 DNs, and anything is possible, stand-up guys all over the place, whatever they want to do with this crazy front 6-7 that they've designed and have been able to accrue. And I do wonder if you walk him up, and that Henoc has got responsibility to understand the Canadian game, not just in the tackle box, but sideline to sideline. I mean, the guy gets it. He's been around for a decade in the CFL. And as you say, missed some tackles at times, but he seems to understand the game in a cerebral way that you would expect from a Canadian veteran middle linebacker. Same way that I think of Corey Greenwood in the way that he plays is he might not make every single play, but he sees it. Like, he understands where the ball is going, the tendencies, the percentages, all that stuff. He reads it naturally. He's very cerebral in that way. So when I see Henoc and the idea of stepping him up, I just imagine that you've got Charleston Hughes, Cordero Law, Sean Oakman, whoever flying up the edges. Now you've got a guard basically manned up over the top and a center on Henoc Muamba. And now you've got Cam Judge flying in against a running back on a blitz, or you're showing Cam Judge off the edge. He drops out and the free safety's coming down to the strong side of the field. I mean, the blitz packages that they can run, I think, with having a big body middle linebacker. And again, Henoc is not a tall guy, but he's thick. And he can absolutely maintain a gap presence. And so if they're going to play some type of gap integrity scheme in Toronto with this new unit, again, the system is going to be important to this entire conversation. But if that's what they're going to do, your mind starts to wander with the idea of, okay, he can handle that gap. We got some beasts up front. We got some pass rushers. We can now run Henoc Muamba on a blitz into a tackle and have Charleston Hughes looping inside against a guard who's off balance. Yeesh. Yep. I mean, that's the type of stuff that they've created here. It's not just the ratio flexibility, it's the quality of player and the opportunities it's going to afford their defense.
So you're saying steal the Calgary 2018 Alex Singleton thing.
Yeah.
He always, that frustrated me so much, because he would just be parked there right behind the tackles. And that year I was trying to count, well, how many are in the box for run plays, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is he in the box or is he not? Is he showing? Is he not? What the hell is he doing? And he was just there.
Yeah.
And that sounds like what you're encouraging for Toronto in 2021.
Totally.
And
it's because I think Alex Singleton is a great comparison for Henoc, not necessarily in the absolute style of play, but in the sense that he knows that if he needs to get to the strong B gap, he can line up behind the tackle weak. Like, he doesn't have to be lined up there to get there. He understands timing of the snap. He sees the motion coming. He knows, okay, if this guy's going to run cross ball motion and run to the flats on play action, I don't absolutely have to be off the edge right when he's on the other side of the formation. I can time it up and I can jump him and ride him as the quarterback comes out of his ride fake and tries to flip to the flats. And, oh no, Henoc took that away last second. Like, their understanding of when to jump routes, when to get to the correct gap, how to understand where offensive linemen are pulling and getting to, like, that's what makes a really good player. But I'll also say not just because of the hair, but there was a little bit of Troy Polamalu and Alex Singleton. Like that dude was random at times. He would just be like, you know what? I'm going to stand outside the strong defensive end as the middle linebacker. And then at the very snap, he would drop back into a hook zone in the middle of the field. It's like, I don't know if they were calling that. I don't know if that was really in what Calgary was asking him to do. He just knew where and this is one of the things that I love about really smart football players who have veteran experience. They don't care where you start. All you're asked is to end up somewhere. So if you have the ability to show something, and a coach will say this all the time to veteran guys, right, in pro football, is if you have the ability to get to the finish line when I need you there, I don't care where you start. Just know that if you mess up getting to the finish line and you get too creative and too wonky, it's on you. But guys like Henoc and Alex Singleton, and we could list more of them off, they're the ones that understand how to get to the finish line at the right time. And again, I do think that that's going to help Toronto big time.
Yeah, I like this move a lot, and I like the price they're able to do it at.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are looking forward to seeing what he's going to look like in the lineup. I do want to mention for you here, because I forgot off the top. How could I forget our dear sponsors? Oh my goodness, the live read. I got to get it in. We should
have had a whistle to blow to get you to call that. Just
offside,
Marshall Ferguson.
Speaking of not ending up at the finish line when you're supposed to be there, the Canadian Football Perspective Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Fox 40, helping you return to play safely with their latest innovations, the Fox 40 Tri-Layer Whistle Mask and the Fox 40 Electronic Whistle. For 15% off all your whistle needs, visit fox40shop.com and enter the code CFP15. Again, CFP15 on fox40shop.com. The last thing that we want to tackle for you today is a fun article that was written by CFL.ca a couple weeks ago here, and I saved it because I thought that it would be a fun one. It kind of made my imagination wander, as I'm wont to do throughout the day, especially when you're not working a steady job. You tend to let your mind wander a little bit more. And so I ended up looking at this article on which CFL records could live forever. And I don't know if it's the university education in me or the contrarian in me, but as a theory, anytime I see somebody say, oh, that's never going to change, my mind immediately goes to, want to bet? And starts to think, okay, now let's look around and see who might actually be able to do it. So I just wanted to single out a couple of these different records that some of them are career, some of them are single season, but I do think that they're interesting ones because so many of them are impossible. And again, this is fantasy land. Oh, and the great thing about all-time records, as you know, DT, is that I saw Jeremiah Masoli on a completion streak record when I was watching him in Edmonton in 2016, 17, whatever it was. And it came out of nowhere. Like, these are the things about records, is anybody can do anything on any day. All we want to do here as a little game to end off the podcast today is to talk about if somebody were to do the unthinkable and to break any of these records, who would we believe has the greatest chance to be able to do so? So let's begin with.
Can I put a disclaimer first, Marshall?
Yeah.
Okay, remember the game Tom Brady was on fire and he had like 400 yards in 4 minutes, and then they benched him in the second half, and you go, the damn NFL record is 554 yards. Norm Van Brocklin, we've all been waiting for that one forever. He would have had that in his sleep. Oh, no, we're going to put Tom on the bench. Are you, didn't Alvin Kamara have like 4 touchdowns in a heartbeat, and the 5, 6, the record's 7. Can we get him 7? No, we're going to quarterback sneak one. What the hell are you doing? Yeah. Coaches are the biggest impediment to us getting these record performances. You don't think Alvin Kamara would have liked 7 touchdowns?
Yeah. By the way,
funny died on that forever.
Funny side note on just the name Alvin Kamara. I got to bring this up because obviously Drew Brees retires. Drew, we love you. You're amazing. All the guests. But his backup, Taysom Hill, I saw that the New Orleans Saints signed him to a 4-year, $1 million contract.
140.
But all 4 years are voidable, which is a salary cap mechanism to be able to. And I saw somebody quote tweet it, and they said, wait a minute. Taysom Hill just got signed to a 4-year deal that's all voidable. The money's not real, but it's waved in front of your face, and you have to perform. And even if you perform, the money might not be there the next year. Oh my God, the Saints just put Taysom Hill on a scholarship.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I saw that and I was like, oh, yeah, they did. They just put him, because anytime when you're on, hey, congratulations, kid. we're giving you a full ride for 4 full years. Come on down to Alabama. End of your first year marijuana violation. Just kidding. Please get off our campus. Like, any of that stuff can happen at any point. So, but the idea of the single game passing yardage, of course, Matt Dunnigan here with the one, and this 713 is never going to get touched. The thing I find amazing is he was 33 of 52. Like, the dude wasn't even close to being efficient. He was just chucking, and things were going deep. It was an average of 13.7 yards per attempt. He threw 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, led the Bombers, of course, to a 50-35 home win over Edmonton when he was in Winnipeg. So who has the greatest chance to pass the single game passing yards? Again, this is just 2021 quarterbacks that we are talking about.
Let's see. The top passing game in 2019 was Vernon Adams, followed by McLeod Bethel Thompson and Bo Levi Mitchell. I don't think Bo has the receivers to do it this year. Who's got Jeremiah? No, they would just run the ball out. Honestly, oh gosh, it's probably Saskatchewan won't run the football if Fajardo got up high.
Yeah,
it's honestly probably Vernon Adams. I would have to go with Vernon Adams, not necessarily just because he had the most passing yards in the game last year. That's a great stable of receivers, and Montreal is not going to be blowing anybody away in my mind. Apart from the games with Ottawa, that's a whole different deal. I feel like Vernon Adams would be the one, and I'm not on team Vernon Adams for the coming season for being a great quarterback, but if someone's making a run at 7-13, it might have to be VA in a 48-46 win, upset win over the Argos at BMO.
Okay, so I like where you're going with this, because the equation that you just used there was high scoring, desperate team, maybe not winning a ton of games, but somebody who has the ability to just go off at any moment and throw for a ton of yardage. My equation is similar, but I'm also going to be factoring in a coach who wants to keep a guy in the game. Now, what allows somebody to stay in the game beyond when they're supposed to? One of my favorite videos ever, back when Vine was a thing, was Peyton Manning in a blowout game running onto the field, and Brock Osweiler running for his helmet, seeing Peyton jogging onto the field, and in the background on CBS, Brock Osweiler throws up his hands and goes, "You've got to be kidding me. I don't get to play on this Broncos team because Peyton never comes out of the game." And so for me, I'm thinking a veteran quarterback who has great firepower with a coach who respects him a lot, that can gun it anytime and has an extremely talented receiving group. Mike Riley, at some point, like, this might be a crown jewel where he's playing against somebody that's down, maybe an East team, like you say, Ottawa, something like that. I hate to bang on Ottawa, but if somebody's down on their luck and Mike Riley has a motivated day as a veteran who sees the entire field and has some great receivers, if Mike Riley gets, into a game that's 40-25 and it's the start of the fourth quarter, do you think Mike Riley's asking out of a game? And if Mike Riley is, let's say, at 600 yards going into the fourth quarter, halfway through the fourth quarter, do you think that Rick Campbell, if Mike Riley walks over and says, "Hey, I want to stand and give this thing a go," is Rick Campbell going to go against his veteran quarterback and pull him? I don't think so. So that's the equation I'm using, and I say Mike Riley is my answer.
I'm trying to pull up. Remember, you may well remember the Ticats losing 60-1 to the Calgary Stampeders.
Oh, I do.
Do you have any memory of that game at all, Marshall?
Yes, no, I do. I remember the entire thing vividly because I spent the entire afternoon turning to Coach John Salavantis, my color man in the booth, and going, "What is happening? Have you ever seen something like this?" And of course, Coach Sal's like, "Oh yeah, it was at Independence, Kansas, and JUCO one time in '64, and we had a game where this and this happened, and we were down by 40 at halftime." But yeah, I mean that was a shocking game.
So I was curious because I wanted to see how long Bo stayed in that game. Oh, okay, Bo threw 17 passes in that game for 197 yards. How is that possible? Andrew Buckley went 10 of 10, and Ricky Stanzi went 1 of 2. They didn't even throw for 3 bills.
Stanzi was in the game. Oh my God.
They barely threw for 300 in that game. Jerome Messam, 3 touchdowns. That must have been 1,000 turnovers. Oh my God.
So here's my lasting memory of that was, I think it was Trey Roberson getting a pick 6 off Colaros. Okay. Cause that was in the 0-8 start in 2017. And so here is, which by the way, that was the game that actually required them to bring June Jones in. So, hey, all things turned out. But in in that game, I'll never forget watching it back, because I like when we do the Calgary Edmonton double for Hamilton. I just go to the mountains for a week. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, I got my Jasper National Park shirt on, which is my second home. So I go out there, camp, detox, whatever, turn my phone off, all the rest. And I remember I got home they play the game in Edmonton the following week. I fly home, I download the games and I go to start peeling through them. There's this moment on the sideline in that 60-1 game where Zach Collaros throws the pick six to Trey Roberson, and he walks over to the sideline. He's head down. He's shaking his head. Whatever. Kent Austin walks over, and you can read his lips, and Kent says, "What happened?" And Zach turns and gives, I'm not even kidding, 3 to 5 words, DT, of an explanation. And Kent Austin puts up his hand in front of Zach's face and said, "That's enough," and walks the other direction away from him.
Oh.
It was this. I actually saved it. It's on my computer. And if I ever need a little bit of a laugh, I go back to that, because I'm like, oh my God, that was the unraveling of the Collaros Austin Ticats, was that exact moment of, hey, what happened? Well, the thing was, yeah, that's enough, and walks the other direction away from him. Like, you just do not see things that clearly in a disagreement on the sideline very often. So that jumped out to me. But that's crazy. They didn't even throw for 300 in that game, though.
Yeah, I think so. 197, 10 something. So they were like 30, barely over 300 yards. But gosh, Roy Finch returned touchdown. Shaq Richardson touchdown return. Rob Maver single. Props to Rob Maver. Andrew Buckley completed to Anthony Parker. Amazing.
That's
Amazing.
so good. All right, let's move on to our next one here for you. Where do you want to go next? Do you have any preference? I mean, there's a bunch on this list from CFL.ca if people want to check it out. They are
all absolutely untouchable. Gizmo Williams, 31 return touchdowns. If anybody had 5 return touchdowns in a single season, that cat is going directly to the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, no question. I'm opting out of my deal. I'm going to the NFL. I'm never coming back. So some of these, just by circumstance, will never get touched.
With the Gizmo one, though, DT, if somebody was of a certain age, like a Brandon Banks, where the NFL was no longer interested, would that factor in at all? Like, where is Speedy now anywhere close to that?
You have to be good. You have to be not good enough for the NFL or too old for the NFL. You have to be not good enough to be a starting receiver. And that's the thing, right? Like, because these guys, Hamilton's not putting Brandon Banks back at returning kicks anytime soon. That's a young man's game.
Frankie's got
that's somebody else's deal. Yeah. Frankie's got that on lock. Like, that's done. So I don't see how that one ever happens, because there was a Rider game in 19 in BC where they had 2 return touchdowns in the same game, and the coaches couldn't believe it. Just absolute display. How is this happening to us? Do you imagine a guy who had, if he had 5 return touchdowns in the first half of the season, no one's ever punting him the ball again. We're squibbing the ball downfield all the time. You're not doing that to us again. There's no chance. I just think that one, and maybe it's better because Gizmo was such a transcendent figure in the Canadian Football League. Everybody who remembers watching Gizmo just remembers those times incredibly fondly. Maybe it's best that one kind of sticks around forever. But the game's changed so much, I don't think that one's going anywhere anytime.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The one that I wanted to jump to here was yards from scrimmage for a career. And again,
forget it. Yeah,
I know it's crazy unattainable, but I love this because Mike Pringle, 16,425 yards rushing, 3,830 yards receiving, for a grand total of 20,255 yards from scrimmage in his career. Behind him is George Reed at 18,888. G. Simon at 16,546, Milt Stiegel at 15,208, and Alan Pitts at 14,000. So even in the top 5, you've got a 6,000 yard from scrimmage disparity between all of them. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is yards from scrimmage in a single game. Hal Patterson in 1956, Dick Smith in 1969, Curtis Mayfield 94, Alfred Jackson 94, Ed Buchanan 64. The top 5 on this list, the most recent, are from 20 plus years ago, right? Like, they're 27 years ago. Why does that yards from scrimmage in a single game not get attacked now with the amount of passing that we are doing in the Canadian Football League? Because I understand that this is typically a combination. It's typically a running back, and obviously the older style of football where you could have a flanker back or a halfback or whatever you wanted to call it that could equally catch a toss and break an 80-yard touchdown or run a seam route on a pro pass. Whatever the reasoning is for it, I'm just amazed that we don't have somebody like a James Wilder Jr. or a CJ Gable or in their prime over the last 5-6 years who gets close to that, who gets up in the 250 plus range.
Oh, because running the ball is awful.
Yeah.
It's terrible. You should throw the ball all the time. Like is that coming from a receiver? That's the thing. Like
that's the question.
Yeah, you have to. I was just pulling up from 19. 3 guys had 200-yard games. Each of them had at least 13 targets. Can you imagine if we just changed the conversation on running back touches and went, oh, we need to get our top receiver 20 touches a game? You imagine what Darrell Walker would do with 20 throws a game? Oh, he broke one for 97 yards. Well, okay, he's a third of the way there to a whole new record, right? It would be incredible. You need those fluke plays. You need the Derrick Henry 97-yard touchdown run. You need circumstances to be so bad that all of a sudden, well, there's 100 yards in one play. I'm good. I got my DeVere Posey Grey Cup touchdown, and now I can work on the rest of them. But you need multiples of those, and those do not come along very often. But it can't be a running back because late game coaching is going to take that out of possibility. The backup's in. Okay, here's AJ Willett, and now Wilder can't do anything, or John White this year when he starts off with 150 yards in the first half.
The next one that I've got for you here, I'm bringing up just because I want you to bring up your boy Clayton's stat line from when he was in the CJFL, if you would for me, please. You want me to tell the story first? Clayton Croker, he's my co-host on the Sports Cage on Wednesdays. And Clayton was a quarterback in the Canadian Junior Football League. And he is a record holder. He revealed it to me early on in our time working together. He holds the record for pick sixes in a career in the CJFL. Marshall, I know you can understand his pain. Yeah. So
even if you weren't that terrible, you can still at least empathize.
Well, I was that terrible though, which is why Clayton and I are kindred souls, and we follow each other on Twitter ever since we learned this about each other, and we love each other dearly. And it's because when I was playing in the Ontario Varsity Football League, the OVFL, back in, 2007, I want to say, 2008, somewhere in there. I played for the Limestone Grenadiers in Kingston, Ontario. And we went 0-8, which, hey, maybe it prepared me mentally for the whole Ticats 0-8 in 2017. I don't know. But we went 0-8 on the year. Shockingly, we didn't make the playoffs. So we ended our season after 8 games. But I threw in those 8 games 20 interceptions. Me. We didn't have a backup quarterback. So I just got to stay in games. And my coach, who I love dearly, who's a big Ottawa Red Blacks fan, shout out to Cam McFadden, he allowed me to just stay in games and just keep slinging. And so we went 0-8, and I threw 20 interceptions, which is why I bring this up. Because in 1955, Tom Dublinski threw enough interceptions to make Johnny Manziel proud. It reads on CFL.ca. Manziel, who threw 4 interceptions in the first half of his first career start. I was there. It was magical. By the way, you should have seen the look on Kavis Reed's face in the booth next to me when the 4th interception happened. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. But had no chance of sustaining Dublinski's rate of 34 interceptions in 1 year. The truth is, interceptions just aren't as common these days in the CFL. Since 2000, only 16 quarterbacks have thrown 20 or more interceptions. And the last time was 2010 when Darian Durant and Henry Burris both accomplished the regrettable feat. Will a quarterback ever throw 34 interceptions again? It's not likely. In fact, the percentage of passes intercepted has decreased every single decade since the 1960s. So that makes a lot of sense that you would end up having, the efficiency of the game, the completion percentage, the average depth of target has come closer and closer to the line of scrimmage, accuracy of the quarterbacks, the standardization of the offensive systems, whatever reasoning you want to give, it's not going to happen. But if somebody was going to get to 34 interceptions on the year, who are you picking?
I saw Dominic Davis throw 3 interceptions and 6 passes in a game in Regina, so he would go high on my list. Vernon Adams skated with a lot of dropped interceptions last year, so he would go high on the list. 34 is so many. So I was just doing the math. I'm like, well, what about Trevor Harris? Trevor Harris's career interception rate is 2%. He would have to throw 1,700 passes in a single year, which I would love to see it. That'd be great. That would be a true 20-second clock. And the running game is completely invalidated. You're getting off 90 plays a game, just snap, run to the line. That'd be incredible. Then all these records could fall. He could have the interception rate. Darrell Walker could have the single game yards from scrimmage one. Somebody could certainly take the interception record from Les Brown. Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
this is perfect.
Hey, I would say don't count anything out with Elizondo getting back together with Trevor Harris, okay? I've seen them go to their hybrid turbo package, whatever you want to call it, and they can get it off pretty quick, but I don't know if they want to do that the entire season. But yeah, it's 34 interceptions. It was funny because Dominique Davis, and again, this is unfair because obviously different situation, different team, different receivers, all the rest in 2019. But that was my thought, just because it seemed like he got away with so much. And I'm not even talking about the dropped interceptions necessarily. It was putting the ball just in a bad spot, even if it wasn't near somebody, where I'm going, I don't know what you're reading there, but it didn't look like it was a standardized read to me. The other one that jumps out to me as a possibility in this, and I say this a little bit tongue in cheek because I genuinely believe that if he's going to throw 34 interceptions, he's going to throw 70 touchdowns, because his interception to touchdown ratio is always going to basically be 2-1. But Jeremiah Masoli can put the ball in some pretty crazy places sometimes. And I say that not because I think he's going to throw that many, but because if they were to do the same thing and decide, you know what, running game, Don Jackson's nice, but whatever, let's just throw the ball every single time. Jeremiah could throw 34 and probably still get away with it because the defense is good enough and because he'd probably throw twice as many touchdowns.
And that would be the thing. You would need to be getting paid off, right, for all these interceptions. Who is the highest interception rate? Well, it's Trevolution, but he's now in the NFL. Yeah, Dom Davis, currently the highest career interception percentage, just ahead of Jonathan Jennings. Oh, Dane Evans.
Yeah. Dane Evans was
3.4%.
Sneaky one that caught up on me when I was looking at the end of season going into the Grey Cup, where I'm like, man, I did not realize he was that high. But some of that was early season decision making that I think he learned from as he went on. There's a game in BC where he had a couple of bad ones that I just don't think he was seeing the field all that well at that point in his early CFL career. But is there one more that you want to toss in here? Just a fun bag of one that caught your eye or somebody that you think will never get surpassed, but it's fun to imagine?
I sort of wanted Justin Medlock to keep kicking till he was like 50 years old because one, I fully believe he could do it. But that Louis Pasaglia looks really smug there on 408 games played and 3,991 career points. He's so smug. Medlock, just to me, the best kicker in the history of the CFL. I can't imagine he is anywhere even within the even close distance to this 1,485 points. So he just needed to play 20 more seasons. So 60s. Holy cow.
My favorite party trick back when we used to have things called parties where you would get together with large groups of people indoors between four walls without wearing masks and stuff was if anybody said to me, hey, you cover the CFL or you care a lot about Canadian football, tell me the coolest thing you know about the CFL. I would say, do you know anybody who's played a professional sport beginning in 1976 and stopping in 2000? And they would look at me and just like, sorry, that's not a thing. You think Tom Brady has longevity. Oh, you think that LeBron James has longevity, what he's doing right now at his age, 37, 38. May I introduce you to the mustache known as Louis Pasaglia and look up some of his career details because none of them will make sense. I remember when I was in university pretty early on, I got given a CFL stat book. I was sitting on a shelf somewhere. I picked it up and my, imagination started to kind of wander through. Oh, I wonder what's here. And I looked at I flipped through a random page and the numbers 1976 to 2000 jumped off the page to me. And I went, that's a misprint. And then I went back and looked at it and I was like, that's a real thing because I had not been educated in the church of Louis Pasaglia previous to that. And once I realized that was a real thing, you go, okay, how many points did you? Okay, now I get it. Now I understand why this is completely unattainable. Medlock would have been a great one for that. The kicking game is so difficult to project because guys typically are good for relatively the same amount of points per season, but depending on what offense you're playing in, what their score zone finishing percentage is, how long obviously you're going to play is the biggest differentiator in that. But yeah, I mean, Pasaglia he's not getting, I honestly don't know how anybody, my favorite note in this they put on CFL.ca DT was how remarkable was Pasaglia's career. Paul McCallum played 24 seasons, but still comes up 68 games short of the record. Bob Cameron, almost equally impressive, fell 14 games shy of the mark.
And Bob played forever. When Pasaglia retired, I was still a writer at SportsCenter. It's like, oh, we need to do kind of a numbers thing on Louis Pasaglia. And I remember calculating it, and I wish I could remember, but I took his number of yards punting and I punched that into MapQuest at the time. And it was like the distance from Vancouver to Saskatoon was what he'd punt in his career. And you go, oh my God, let the guy breathe for a minute. Like, incredible. Just as I go through his numbers on CFLopedia, before his final season, his highest ever field goal percentage was 84. That does not play in today's CFL. 72, 67, 69. He had years where he went like 43 of 59. You're cut shushy in this league, in this time, because kicking is just different. So a guy like Medlock, 10 more seasons, maybe the points thing. No, not even close. He's still 2,500 behind. My God.
Yeah, I think Justin likes golf too much, I think, to stick around and want to spend that amount of time in the summer playing football moving forward. But we will see. We will see exactly when and where he decides to get back into the fray if he does. That is going to do it for the breakdown this week. DT, let people know where they can check in and listen to everything that you're doing that's great there on the Sports Cage in Regina.
Monday to Friday on the Sports Cage, we're 4 to 6:30 Saskatchewan time. That's now 6 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Judge from that, because we're in Saskatchewan, we're better, and we don't do that daylight savings time. We just keep sleeping on Sunday. It was pretty great. And yeah, on Twitter at DTOnSC is where I drop all my nonsense. And now I'm going to go watch Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar, because I just bought that this morning, and it's hilarious, and you have to watch it.
You got to catch up on DVR for after the final rose too. Let me know what you thought of Emmanuel Acho and the job he did hosting. I mean, it was stiff. I'm not going to lie to you, but I don't know. I feel like Rachel deserved the criticism that she got, but there was so much swirling. You know what? We'll save it for the next podcast. The Canadian Football Perspective podcast is brought to you by our friends at Fox 40. The Fox 40 Close Vicinity line is designed to help you return to play safely for 15% off all your whistle needs. Visit fox40shop.com and enter the code CFP15. DT is shaking his head at me. That means I have absolutely wore him down throughout this podcast. That is it for us. I am at TSN_Marsh. If you want to find me, make sure you are subscribing, downloading, and letting us know what you like, what you don't on Canadian Football Perspective as we continue to bring you unique Canadian football coverage. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you coming up next Wednesday right here on The Breakdown. On Thursday, Scott Flory, the University of Saskatchewan head coach out there with the Huskies. Yeah, he is going to be on All Canadian with Wade and Connor. And then on Friday, it's myself and Kyle Mello. We will bring you Marsh and Mello. We will dive into all of the CFL and, of course, U Sports news and notes of the week, plus whatever the hell we feel like, including the Friday host party with the best sound of the week, which we didn't get to last week. So we're looking forward to digging into for you coming up on Friday morning. For now, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Make sure you're following at CF Perspective, and we will talk to you very soon.